Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chupacabra's Lair. I am, of course, your host, Larry the Chupacabra, and today we're taking a look at the minimalist first-person shooter action of Minimum, a game that just came out of beta into the open access, early access program of Steam. So I think that the first thing you'll probably notice about Minimum is that it obviously has a minimalist art style, and the playstyle is sort of minimalist at the same time as well. If I really had to give a comparison to the game, I'd say it's an awful lot like a regular first-person shooter, sort of like Titanfall or maybe Call of Duty, somehow had like an amalgamated baby with Team Fortress. Because your primary weapons are, things like machine guns and shotguns and everything. And when you're killing people inside of the game, they drop a fancy little blue orb which powers your gun up and your person up and makes it so you can run and gun a whole hell of a lot more, and a lot more overpowered. Once you sort of get a few buffs after killing some people, it really snowballs from there. So that is essentially the basic premise of how the game runs and guns and shoots. You've got your primary weapon and your secondary weapon. Those are both pretty much the same thing. The difference is that whatever you have out and equipped at the time of running over those blue orbs is what ends up getting buffed up. And each gun can be buffed up to 5 times, and when they are completely buffed up, obviously their graphics have changed, but they also glow a nice eerie red, which lets you know to get the hell out of Dodge if and when you don't have a gun of equal capacity or you think you're going to get stabbed in the face. So there's also a pretty decent variety of guns. You obviously start out with the bullet hell machine gun. Honestly, I think one of the things I disliked the most was you can't really get a good machine gun that has a slower rate of fire but is a little bit more accurate, because with the default machine gun, you end up being able to dodge around it a lot, and a lot of other weapons tend to have the upper hand. You've also got you've also got sniper rifles, you've got shotguns, you've got katanas of a variety of different abilities, you've got basically plasma mortar launchers. You have what's very similar in style to the sticky launcher from Team Fortress 2 in the grenade launcher, where you can shoot a bucket of grenades on the ground and then time detonate them when you please. So you definitely get a nice variety of weapons to pick from. The other thing that I really like is that each one of the weapons has obviously the primary fire, which shoots the gun, and a lot of them have a secondary rate of fire. The shotgun that you start out with allows you to boost yourself up into the air, and the bullet hell gun allows you to just shoot a quick little burst of bullets in close quarters to make somebody very dead. And then, of course, the katana, which I see a lot of people running around with, allows you to quickly dash in and start stabbing the shit out of people. Currently, I've found that the shotgun and the katana are probably the most overpowered items in the game, at least at the time of me recording during the beta. They were really easy to quickly get into close quarters with somebody, and at like level 3+, they were pretty much able to one-shot the enemy for the most part. So beyond just your primary guns, you also have a secondary fire, which can either be a grenade or an auto turret. The grenade obviously just goes explodey, and then the auto turret will set up shop and start shooting the shit out of people. Both are pretty good. I don't necessarily like one over the other. The one thing I can note is that obviously the auto turret will have a little bit better time shooting people, and it's really easy to dodge the frag grenades because, well, they're giant glowing balls that are being flung through the air. It's kinda hard to miss. So let's talk about some of the other game mechanics that go into the game modes. Currently, in the game, they are planning to have 3 game modes. You've got Team Deathmatch, which is just people shooting other people. You've got this dungeon crawler that wasn't available when I was testing it out, that I'm not entirely certain about. And then you have this sort of Titan defense game mode, where you have to defend your base against an invading enemy juggernaut whose job it is to break into your base and smash everything up and kill you. So you have to summon your Titan in order to avoid that whole thing happening. So that's actually a kind of an interesting game mode, and it gives you more of a goal than just roaming around in groups shooting people, even if it sort of devolves into that. And periodically throughout the match, you have to obviously power up your Titan, but in order to do so, you've got to kill secondary objectives, or in this case, little critters, or creatures or creeps, very similar to how you might have to kill creeps in, say, something like a MOBA, like League of Legends or Smite. And they drop two things. They drop the power-up orbs that you need to get your Titan going to combat the enemy Titan and eventually break into their base. And then they also drop crafting materials that are also dropped from little players as you murder them. And these crafting materials are what sort of builds into the other sort of leveling process or upgrading process within the match itself. So these little shards of stuff, they allow you to build armor, either the Knight's armor set, which is more of a defensive armor set, which helps you stay alive, or you can end up, creating the Berserker's armor set, which allows you more offensive capabilities, and each one of these items individually can be upgraded to like tier 3. So this allows you to sort of combat folks that are running around with fully maxed out weaponry, or might be a little bit faster or have a different playstyle than you, so that you can live just long enough to finish them off either alone or with the help of a couple buddies. Especially when they're fully powered up, that you definitely want to use a little bit of teamwork in order to kill somebody. And then of course, don't be a dick and steal other people's blue orbs. So those are sort of the baseline mechanics. You can level up your weapons and you can level up your guns, and then you have different maps and different game modes that you can play in order to shoot people and progress in level and everything. The notes that I do have before we jump in and start taking a look at the interface for crafting and upgrading your weapons is that I feel like, again, close quarters combat is a really overly strong mechanic in the game right now, especially from katanas. One thing I noticed happening a lot was that I would end up playing like with a shotgun and going mano-a-mano with people using the katanas, because they can get right up in your face and then one-shot you, and there's not a whole lot of things you can do because they're just so mobile, because as they level up they just run a lot faster than you do. Similarly with other types of shotguns. And because of that high rate of mobility, people who use things like the machine gun until it's powered up have a harder time. And then, of course, people who use anything with a slower rate of fire, like the sniper rifle or the plasma launchers, end up not being able to hit practically anything at all unless you lead the target by like 2 miles. Which is difficult, and as you might imagine, relatively easy to avoid if you're somebody with a katana wanting to get stabby with people's faces. But otherwise, I think if they sort of mish around and fix that sort of mechanic and even out the guns and maybe offer a few machine guns, I think the weapons would be balanced pretty well. Especially because as a shotgunner, you can kind of put yourself up in the air and shoot back down at their head to make them go explodey. So briefly jumping back out of the gameplay mechanics and looking around at the sort of loadout screen, you can get a running list of your stats on the front page, sort of what achievements you've acquired and what sort of a challenge you want to go after next to try and get some unlockables, along with your level and everything. And then you can jump into your weaponry loadout and decide what weapons you want in what combination, up to 10 different item sets, and how you want them arrayed, so that you have sort of a variety of different weapon sets in which to choose from to make sure that you can deal with a variety of situations. That's all pretty standard as far as, different games are concerned. But the one thing that sort of delineates this from other games is there will eventually be a system with which you can level your different weapons to give them increased stats and perks so that they can reload a little faster, deal a little bit more damage in certain situations, etc. So I thought that was kind of nice. It gives you somewhere to progress in the game and not just standard stabbing things and murdering things. And it also is kind of cool that it gives you a preview of what the weapons look like as they get powered up, and they get more shots that they can fire, and they get more abilities. And then the other component is they have a pretty advanced crafting system for a first-person shooter, where you have the option of either picking from a weapon schematic that you already have available and purchasing that schematic using the red cube in-game currency, which is limited. That might even be something you have to pay for later. And then you've got the other sort of crafting resources you gain from playing in matches in order to craft new weaponry. And so as you can see, there is a whole veritable forest of different weapons that you can choose from that have different weapons and rates of fire and secondary abilities. The one thing I was sort of disappointed with was the lack of different types of machine guns, because, sure, shotguns are nice, and different mortars and sniper rifles and katanas, that's all well and good, but they've only got like 2 types of machine guns. One that makes it so that you can get better drops from enemies, and then the other one is just your standard you start with. Not super exciting, and both of them have a pretty bad rate of accuracy as far as shooting goes. But the other things that you can get going here is you can also, eventually I'm sure, get different weapons that drop for you in the game as you're playing, much like Team Fortress, and then you can deconstruct those weapons into raw materials for crafting, along with some limited amount of upgrading that you can do to your weapons, maybe tweak them so they have a different rate of fire and hit a little less hard, and maybe one of them hits a little bit harder and shoots a bit slower. Different things like that might be interesting to see in the future. So far, nothing really available from either of those categories, but it's pretty cool. But yeah, and so we'll just end off here by taking a look at some more of the in-game footage. You notice that they've also got a variety of maps here that I'll show, and it's sort of like an Egyptian archaeological site where they're digging up old artifacts, and you've got to fight for some sort of ancient alien weapon that you've found beneath the sands. And I think it was kind of cool that they also offer a different selection of creeps in the maps, where in the primary map mode, which is this indoor hangar, you've got these machines that construct little square robots that kind of dink around like that WALL-E movie. But in this other game mode, they've got these little crystal scorpion-looking things that the little lizards or something that kind of roam around and you shoot and they drop, metallic fragments and everything. So they definitely have a good change up in art if you're not so into the one map mode. And later it might be interesting if you prefer a certain map to give people the option to select one map over the other as things get going a little bit further. And I'm certain that you will start to see different types of game modes, maybe some like challenge modes or puzzle modes, and not just shooting each other in the face modes. But anyway, as always, I have been Larry the Chupacabra. If you are interested in picking up Minimal, it is available on Steam Early Access right now for around $20. You might even be able to get it on a sale in the future. So, would I play this game in the future? Probably. I mean, I'm not a big fan of first-person shooters on the whole, but I like what's going on here. So, hopefully they keep going with it. Maybe they'll find a way to make it even more cutesy and kind of goofy and cartoony, and that'll sort of make a lot more people interested in it. I have been Larry the Chupacabra. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will catch you next time. Ta-ta for now.